That's all, my dear students. We are going to be discuss the chapter wise importance for the purpose of the examination. So be careful while going to be learn the chapters. Okay. Yes, ma. We are learning about the next 8th chapter, that is the heredity from parent to progeny. So as we know that the information is go from the one generation to another generation. That is nothing but the heredity. That is the from parents to the progeny. So in this chapter, more of the important things that they will ask in the examination, few or them I have mentioned upon the board. So let's see here that what are the new characters and what are the variations, and why Mendel selected the pea plant, and the next is the 3 assumptions done by the Mendel, and what is phenotype, genotype, first Fourier generation, second Fourier generation, what are homologous, what are heterologous. All these things are very necessary to be understood in this chapter. So all my dear students, here you can see that inheritance and heredity are interlinked together. So you need to be understanding what is the inheritance and what is the heredity. The process through which the variations or the new characters are going to be passed, the characters, the traits pass from the one generation to another generation, the process is called the inheritance. Here the Mendel, he is known to be as the father of the genetics. He has performed the various experiments over the pea plant to understand that how does this characters pass from one generation to another generation, how they get stored. So usually these factors pass due to the gene, and the gene is nothing but the information that is present within the DNA. Okay, now it is like a chip, a memory chip, which contains the lots of information within it. On the same way, the genes contains the lots of information within it that carry from one generation to the next generation. Now here you can see that variations. Variation is really very important term here, variations. And this variation we need to be aware of it. The definition of it is that when there is a differences in between the same group of the organisms. For example, we can take the our example itself, the human beings. The human beings have the variations within them. Okay, now what will the differences among the same group of the organism is known to be the variation. So why the variations required? Actually this gives the way for the evolution according to the Darwin. So that is why variations we need to be understand. Most of the times it asks as a 1 mark question, but some of the times it asks as the 4 mark question. So we need to be learn the Darwin's theory along with the variations. Now the pea plant, selection of the pea plant. Actually it is an annual plant, and it has it is an annual plant. It's really easy to handle. Why? Because it's a 1 year plant, and the artificial and the natural propagation can be takes place here. So that's why the Mendel has selected you. 5 points are there. You can go within a chapter itself. Now the next thing is 3 assumption of the Mendel. Actually the Mendel explains the 3 assumptions after taking the several kinds of the experiments. Most of the 10,000s of the experiments he has done with the pea plant. That's why he is known to be as the father of the genetics. So what are the 3 assumptions he given? That every individual has the 2 traits. Every individual to represent one character, it has the 2 individuals, and that individuals contains character due to the presence of 2 traits. For example, here you can see it is a tall plant and it is a short plant. Tall plant having the T and capital T and capital T have represented. These are the 2 factors which represent one character. And for the small one, I have returned the small t, small t. You can assume it as a tall plant and as a short plant. Okay, and I have returned the trait for the small t and small t. So when they get self across, then we can get this first generation. This is known to be as the first generation. And when we self cross in the first generation, then we can get this thing, that we get that 1 tall plant, 2 tall plants, okay, and 1 short plant. Okay, so if we write the ratio for it, we can write 1:2, 2:1. Okay, now, or if we calculate the percentage, 75% of the tall and the 25% are the short. So this is the tall plant and the short plant ratio. Actually what I explained here, it is about the Monohybrid cross of the Mendel. Monohybrid cross of the Mendel, what could be the phenotypic ratio and the genotypic ratio? Phenotypic ratio is the 3:1. That is 75% all are tall and 25% all are short or dwarf. Next thing is genotypic ratio. Genotypic ratio represents the internal gene makeup. As you see here, this plant also tall, this plant also tall. But this plant contains the factors, both are same, so it is known to be as the homozygous or the pure tall plant. But here we can see that this plant, why? Because this long plant is the result of the combination of these two plants, so that's why it represents the capital T and the small t. Okay now? So it is a difference. So it is known to be as the heterozygous plant. Okay now? This heterozygous plant, here the internal gene makeup is different. Either it is this one also long and this one also long. So the internal gene makeup is nothing but the genotype. So that for the monohybrid cross, the internal gene makeup is 1:2:1. Here the 1 represents the pure tall plants, 2 represents the hybrid tall plants, and again 1 represents the short or the dwarf plants. On the same way, you can take the examples of the yellow peas. Yellow peas get crossed with the green peas. So in the first generation, we all get the yellow peas. Why? Because in a one time, a plant can be a tall or can be a short. It cannot be short and tall. So that's the reason that only one character can be possibly appear in the first generation, that is known to be as the dominating feature, when the only one character is going to be expressed. For example, here the capital T, which is responsible for the tallness, is going to be represented, so it is the tall plant. Now the next thing is a dihybrid cross. What the Mendel has done in the dihybrid cross, he crossed the 2 characters. Here we have selected 1 character only, that is the length of the plant body, or we only selected the color. But the Mendel in the dihybrid cross selected the 2 characters, that is the color and the type of the seed. He selected the color, that is the green color and yellow color, and he selected the type wrinkle versus soft. So there also you need to be aware of it. Their phenotypic ratio is 9:3:3. You need to be aware of it. 9:3:3:1. So this is the phenotypic ratio of the plant. Now the next thing is very important in this chapter is the variations in the beetle population. Variations in the beetle population, we will learn the 4 cases, mostly 3. The first case explain us about the natural selection, second case explain us about the genetic drift, and the third case explain us about the passing of the inheritance characters instead of the acquired characters. So here we need to be aware of what is the natural selection, that is the color change in the beetles into green, from red to green, that is the natural selection. Nature supported the green color, so the population of the green beetles appeared more. Next thing is increases. Next thing is the blue color appearance, the accident. Accidentally the red color beetles died and the population of the blue color beetles increases. So that is one of the case of the accidental evolution, but that is happens due to the genetic drift. Next thing is the starvation. In the third case, we learn about the starvation. Due to the starvation, the size of the beetles decreases, but it increases again when the beetles got the actual amount of the food. And the fourth case here is that is the speciation. Okay, the speciation. When these beetles move away from each other and spend a long time, due to this long time, what happened? Small variations accumulated within this, and these variations leads to a complete change in an organism's body that make them to different from their Asian peoples. So this is a kind of the being different from the Asian parents, that ancestors, that is nothing but a new kind of new origin of the species that is known to be as the speciation as well. Now the next thing is acquired and inherited characters. Acquired characters, the characters which we get in our lifetime. For example, I can able to learn that how to run fast, or I can able to learn that how to swim. So I can able to learn that how to play well. So this is the acquired character that I get. The most it's very simple example that you can easily understand that if a Sachin Tendulkar is there, his son may not be able to play that much well as he played. So that is a kind of the character which cannot be passed from his Sachin to his son. So that is a kind of the acquired character, not the inheritance character. If it is passed, then it will be inheritance. If it is not, then it is the acquired character. Now the next is the Lamarckism. Lamarckism, he has done a certain absorption over the natural animals, and he found that, and he explained that acquired characters may be passed. He given the example that this deer, by stretching continuously their neck, they turn into the zebra. So actually it not happens. The August Weismann make him to fail in his theory. Now the next thing, Darwin's theory. Here you need to be explained about the variation, natural selection, and regarding to the genetic drift and speciation and evolution. These four things need to be right within the Darwin's theory. Now the next thing is the embryology. Embryology, one of the question in a 1 mark or a 2 mark, and that will ask that what is mean by this embryology and how it going to be helpful to understand the concept of evolution. So here we can say that embryology provides the evidences. For example, if we compare the embryo of a frog with a fish, then the embryo of the frog can able to identify as the embryo of a fish itself. We cannot recognize that whether the embryos belong to the fish or the frog. So, and the same thing, the tadpole of the frog mostly resemble to the fish but not frog. So it says that it might be possible that these frogs might be evolved from the fishes itself. So this is one of the evidence that we can able to understand that all the organisms may be originated from the one point. And here also another thing, that if we compare the embryos of the several other animals like the human beings, horse, fish, frog, etc., then we cannot understand in the earlier stages that whether the embryos belongs to the man, whether the embryos belongs to the horse, whether the embryos belongs to the fish. So that's the reason that we can capable to say that all the living organisms might have evolved from the same origin. Now the next thing is fossils. As the fossils also provide the evidences to understand that whether the all living organisms have the inner correction that they might have all the same ancestors or not. Archaeopteryx is a bird or the reptile. Actually we can say that it is resembles the birds and as well as the reptiles. So we can say that the birds, the aves might be arises from the reptiles by studying the structure of the Archaeopteryx that resembles both aves and as well as the reptiles. Now the next thing is homologous and the analogous organs. It is one of the major important concepts of the chapter. Several times it asks, and it might be asked as a converging and the diverging evolution. Here what we understand by the homologous organs means homo, the same origin, and the analogous means different origin. When the same origin is there, for example, the forelimbs of the man, forelimbs of the whale, forelimbs of the birds, forelimbs of the cheetah, they are originated from the same skeletal, same origin, but they do perform the different functions. That is the homologous. And it is also known to be as the diverging evolution. On the same way, the opposite is analogous organs. This analogous, we can take the examples of the feathers of the bird and the wings of the bat and the wings of the butterfly. They three performs the same function, but their origin is different. The birds fly with the help of the feathers, and the bats can able to fly due to the help of the skin which are present in between the fingers. On the same way, the butterflies fly due to they have the certain external very light wings over them, and this origin is different, but they are using the different organs for the flying purpose, so they are converging together. So this kind of the evolution we say as a converging evolution. So here these are the some of the concepts that we have discussed from this chapter. If you have any more doubts, you can contact with me. Okay, hello my dear students. As you know that we are going to be continue the chapter wise review regarding to the SSC examinations biology. So here we are with the next chapter, that is the 9th chapter in our biology textbook, our environment, our concern. So we need to be aware of what is our environment. Everyone is familiar of this word, that what is environment. So usually we think about it's just our surrounding. And what is our concern, that how we need to be get concerned regarding to our surroundings, and how we can understand that how can we keep it clean and how can we manage it in a good level. So the environment is nothing but the sum of the biological and the physical factors that interact chemically, and it is affect an organism, that is known to be as the environment. So we need to be aware of it. It is all kinds, either though it is living things or the non-living things, everything involved within the environment. What do you find in our surroundings? We find the every kind of things, the living things and the non-living things. We can categorize them as the biotic and the abiotic factors. Biotic factors usually we say as the biological factors, and the abiotic factors we can usually say as the physical factors. So what could be the biological factors? Biological factors are nothing but the biotic factors, which is a part within an environment that is known to be as all living forms. Either it is microbes, or it is fungi, or it is algae, or it is human beings itself, or plants, or many other living beings, animals, terrestrial or aquatic, all included within the biotic factors. Now the next thing is the physical factors or the abiotic factors within an environment. What are these? Non-living things. What does non-living things included? First of all, what we see the non-living thing, the air itself, and the next thing the sunlight, the soil, the water, and the humidity, the temperature which is get maintained within the environment, that included within the abiotic factors, that usually we say as the physical factors. So by the examination point of view, usually the direct definition for the environment may not be asked, but it may ask about that what are the biotic factors and the abiotic factors within an environment, and how they are interlinked with each other. So as we know that the environment itself says that the interaction of these factors among them is nothing but the environment. So usually the biotic factors and abiotic factors differences or the interconnections will ask in the examination. Now the next very focused thing from this chapter is the food chain. The food chain you have learned in earlier classes as well. It's very simple and easy. Why? Because the food chain shows the connection in between the one level of the organism to the other level of the organism, or in a simple way we can say that it shows that who is eating whom within an habitat. Okay, now for example, in our surrounding, by the grasshopper can be eaten by the frogs, and the frogs can be eaten by the snakes, and the snakes can be eaten by the eagles. So that is one of the example of the food chain. Okay, so food chain is really very important. Usually when we write any food chain, for example, if we write that grass or the grains that eaten by the rabbits, grass, okay, and rabbit, and the next rabbit get eaten by the snake, and the snake get eaten by the eagle. Okay, here we are showing one level to next level with the help of an arrow mark. So many of the time in the examination it will ask that what is the function of this arrow mark, or what the arrow mark referred as. So the arrow mark shows the trophic levels within a food chain, who eats whom. So here we can see that the grass is going to be intake by the rabbit, and the rabbit is going to be consumed by the snake, and the snake is going to be consumed by the eagle. So it's very simple thing, logically also you can able to understand and write. Now the next important thing is the food web. So as we know that the grass not only eaten by the goat, rabbit, or many other insects, but it also eaten by the all all kinds of the herbivorous animals. So the interconnections of the food web is nothing but the interconnections of the food chain is nothing but the food web. Okay. So this is another important thing, that when we connect the all kinds of the food chains, then it gives the representation of the food web. Now the next important term within this chapter is the niche. So the niche is a perfect position of an animal, of an organism within the food web. It not only shows that what it eats, what is its habitat, but the complete work and duty of the particular organism, its position, its earnings, everything is going to be represented by the niche. So the niche many of the time will ask in the 2-mark questions or the 1-mark questions. Okay, now the next thing is most important thing, ecological pyramids. Okay, now as you know that the next representation of the other way of the representation of food web or the food chain, okay, we can say it as a graphical representation of the food chain is nothing but the ecological pyramid. It was introduced by the Charles Elton. So Charles Elton given the pyramid shape to explain that what happens to the organisms from one trophic level to the another trophic level when we move from the producers to the carnivores. So here in the food chain we can see these always the grass, plants, grains are the nothing but the producers. They produce, they get the energy from the sun and they make the food and they reserve it as a chemical energy within them, and it can pass into the next level, that is we say as the herbivorous, and the herbivorous get consumed by the primary carnivores and the primary carnivores get consumed by the tertiary carnivores. So this is the steps which involve within a food chain. So those steps only we can write in the form of the pyramid. Why? Because when we move from the one trophic level to the next trophic level, we will find that the number of organisms are going to be decreased and the available energy also is going to be decreased. So based upon the what are the things which going to be affect within a trophic levels within a food chain, so we are going to be understand in the term of the ecological pyramid, that is nothing but the graphical representation of the food chain. Now the ecological pyramid is of 3 types, that is the pyramid of number and pyramid of biomass and the pyramid of energy. Here these 3 pyramids are very important. Most of the times it just gives the pyramid and we'll ask to write the definition of it, and most of the times it may give the ask the reason that why there is only the 4 or 3 or 5 steps only within the pyramids. So the reason we need to be aware of that. So pyramid of number, let's see. The pyramid of number, as I have written, the 3 levels. The first trophic level that shows the plant producers, the second trophic level that shows the herbivorous man, and the third trophic, actually the man is not herbivorous but omnivorous. Why? Because the man also consume the plant, so that's why we have taken here as a herbivorous. So trophic level is the second trophic level is the herbivorous and the third trophic level is the carnivorous. Okay, now so the man is going to be eaten by the certain crawl animals as well. So we can take an example here, lion, tiger, etc. Or else you can take any other example, the grass, deer and the lion, tiger, etc. Now the pyramid of number shows the number of organisms provided or number of organisms available at each trophic level. How many number of organisms? If we take the example of grass, deer and the lion, then we can see that the grass is more in number than compared to the deers, and the deers are very less in number than compared to the plants, and the tiger is very less in number, cheetah very less in number than compared to the deer. So the pyramid of number indicates that the number of organisms available at each trophic level. Here in this example we can find that they are going to be decreased at each level, but all the time this pyramid of number may not be straight or upward. So here we have another example in which we can see that it is partially uprighted. In the partially uprighted we have an example, the banyan tree and as producers, and the herbivorous as insects, and the woodpecker as a consumer. So here we can find that on a single banyan tree many number of the insects maybe live, and those insects can be eaten by few of the woodpeckers. So here the number is not going to be uprighted always. Here single banyan tree, the insects are more and woodpeckers are few. So it is not the straightforward pyramid. Now the next thing is pyramid of biomass. So many of the time what does mean by biomass will ask. So we need to be aware of it. So any mass of organic material, organic mass that produced due to the fixation of the carbon dioxide, then that is known to be as the biomass, and which can convert into the energy fuel, that is known to be as the biomass. So we need to be aware of the simple definition of the biomass, the pyramid of biomass. So actually we have taken here the two examples of it. One is terrestrial and another one is aquatic. Why? Because the terrestrial biomass pyramid is always uprighted, and the simply asking question here is why the pyramid of biomass is inverted in the case of aquatic biomass pyramid. So first let's have an example for the biomass pyramid. As here I have taken grass, get consumed by the grasshopper, get consumed by the frog, get consumed by the snake, get consumed by the hawk. So these are the levels, trophic levels of the biomass. Here we see that the mass is going to be decreased at each trophic level of an organism. So it is a kind of the biomass pyramid. Now here we can see the mass is very negligible in the kind of the next aquatic pyramid. Here we will find that the base, that is the producers in the ocean, in the water bodies, they are very small. They are unable to be visible to our naked eyes. So these their mass can be negligible. For example, phytoplanktons. Phytoplanktons mass is negligible then compared to the herbivorous fishes, and the herbivorous fishes mass is negligible then compared to the whales, etc. So the aquatic pyramid biomass is always inverted. So what is the difference in between? Here we can see that some of the times number pyramid may be inverted. You need to be sure that what kind of the question asked in the examination. Based upon that you have to be think. But we have the two examples. One is uprighted pyramid and another one is partial one. And in the case of the pyramid of biomass, we have a one uprighted pyramid, that is the terrestrial one, and we have the another pyramid, that is the inverted one, and that is the aquatic pyramid. Okay now, so simple thing that why? Because the phytoplanktons are microbes and their mass is negligible, so that's the reason that it is inverted. Now the next thing is pyramid of energy. The pyramid of energy explains us about the 10% energy law, and as well as the pyramid of energy gives us the concept to understand that why there is a very little steps or the very few trophic levels are available within the food chain or within a pyramid. So whenever we go from the producers to the carnivorous, every time we will find that the energy is going to be reduced at each trophic level. The energy is going to be reduced at each trophic level. So how much percent of energy is going to be reduced here? 90%, and only the 10% of the energy is available at each trophic level. And another important thing regarding to the pyramid of energy is that at every step the energy is going to be passed only the 10%, and the pyramid of energy is always upright. It not be partial or it not be inverted. It always upright. Okay, why? Because always from one trophic level to next trophic level the energy is going to be reduced. Then where does this energy go? First of all, we need to be aware of what is the source of energy over the planet Earth. As we know that the source of energy is nothing but the sun, and that solar energy is converting into the chemical energy due to the process of photosynthesis, as we know about it all. Now this chemical energy is going to be converted when it gets consumed by the next level of the organisms as a potential energy. So this energy is going to be utilized by the organism itself as a mechanical energy. There it can be go away within the environment forever in the form of heat also when we do respire. And not only this energy is going to be utilized for the preparation of the nails, bones, cartilage, hairs, so which cannot be consumed by the next level of the organisms, so that like the energy is going to be waste or lost to the environment forever. So like that the 90% of energy is going to be lost to the environment, and only the 10% energy is going to be available to the next one, so that it is also known to be as the 10% energy law. Now the next important thing here in this chapter is about the Kolero Lake. So you might have listened about this beautiful Kolero Lake which is present within the Krishna and Godavari district, and it had declared as a bird sanctuary. Why? Because 20 lakh birds every year visit there. So it looks too beautiful. But due to the certain anthropogenic activities of the human beings, that Kolero level is shrinking in size, and the number of birds are going to be decreased every year. So why? Because the human beings are going to be occupied there. They are making the fishiculture, the agriculture, and the factories, companies. So due to this, the Kolero Lake is going to be lose its beauty and as well as its actual natural way of the bird migration of the birds. So you need to be aware of what are the causes for this and how can we overcome, and what you predict to save this lake. You need to be aware of it. So think about it, and once go through the textbook you can come to know about it. Now the next thing, very important highlighted thing in this chapter is the bioaccumulation and the biomagnification. What is mean by this bioaccumulation? So usually when the farmers use the pesticides, they spread it over the plants. Then what happens? These pesticides, which are poisonous in nature, if we consume them, they start to take entry within the plants. Like that, they take the entry from one organism to another organism. So that is known to be as the bioaccumulation. Okay, now the entry of the pollutants within an organism or entry of the pollutants within the food chain is known to be as the bioaccumulation. Now the next thing is biomagnification. When once these pollutants are going to be enter into the food chain, then every stage they are going to be get concentrated. They get concentrated every stage, so that is known to be as the biomagnification. Okay, now increasing level of concentration at each trophic level is known to be as the biomagnification. Now the next thing is Adilabad water reservoir. Adilabad water reservoir, we have to learn about it. Why? Because it is present in our surrounding and it's damnly going to be polluted very much due to the human activities. So in this Adilabad water reservoir, one important thing is bioindicators. The fishes which live within this Adilabad water reservoir found that the accumulation of the metals, okay, the poisonous metals like the cadmium, chromium, ferrous, lead and nickel. So these are the very dangerous metals. If we consume that, they can be fatal to our body. So when we are going to be consume those fishes which found within this Adilabad water reservoir, then those poisonous things are going to be enter in us as well due to the biomagnification. So we need to be aware of those fishes are found as the bioindicators. We can find these metals within the gills and within the muscles and within the body of the fishes. So we need to be aware of the bioindicators, and we need to be aware of this series, that cadmium, chromium, ferrous, nickel and lead. Next, last is sparrowcampen. The sparrowcampen tells us about the foolish characteristic of the Chinese, those who have done. They have killed away all the sparrows and they suffered a lot by the agriculture. So usually when they kill the sparrows, then they comes to know that sparrows are not the enemies for the farmers but the friends. So here we need to be aware of that what happens. The mostly asking question from this concept is that what happens if we eradicate one living organism from the environment. Either it is a sparrow, or it is a kind of fungi, or it is a one kind of plant species, or it is a one kind of living organism. If we eradicate, you can take it as an example rat, or you can take the example as snake, you can take the example of cheetah, lion, etc. Every living being, as in the starting we discussed that the environment is nothing but the interconnection of the organism. Either it is a biotic or abiotic factors. Any one eradicate from it, it completely disturb the balancing within the environment. So how it could be affect? So most of the time asking asking question is, what happens if we eradicate completely one kind of organism from an environment? So you have to make sure that you have to give the correct answer for this. So here is the few things regarding to this chapter. If you have any kind of doubts, then you can ask me, but go through all these things once again.